Minister Maliki Osman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The COVID-19 has caused major disruptions in our external environment. While the situation in Singapore has improved greatly since last year, normalcy remains some way off. Meanwhile, MFA will have to maintain and strengthen relations with our neighbours and partners to achieve peace and prosperity for ourselves and our region. As Minister Balakrishnan had said earlier, as a responsible member of the international community, we hope and we work with our partners to bring Singaporeans home and help foreign nationals do likewise, despite the global impact on travel restrictions. We kept supply chains open and served as an average to facilitate critical and compassionate travel, and the operations of UN agencies such as the World Health Organization and UNICEF. As a reliable host, we saw to the welfare of vulnerable foreigners working in Singapore. We ensured medical care, meals, and phone cards for migrant workers and mandated that their salaries be paid on time. Our relations with our immediate neighbours, Malaysia and Indonesia, remain strong. While issues have cropped up from time to time, we have addressed them constructively. We should not take this cooperation for granted. Relations with our nearest neighbour, Malaysia, can be best characterised by the Malay saying, bagai aur dengan tebing, or like bamboo and the water's edge. Malaysia and Singapore are deeply intertwined with strong people-to-people and economic linkages. Although COVID-19 and ensuing border restrictions have caused significant disruptions, both countries have cooperated to alleviate these challenges. In the early days of COVID-19, we appreciated PM Muhyiddin's assurance that supplies from Malaysia would not be disrupted, even with their lockdown. As Minister Balakrishnan earlier said, Singapore and Malaysia have helped each other during this difficult time. For example, in April 2020, we brought 60 Malaysians out from Bangladesh on a Singapore Airlines flight. Malaysia also helped Singaporeans return home, including 22 Singaporeans who left Nepal the same month on a Malaysian government flight. We have also worked very closely with Malaysian authorities to facilitate Singaporeans' travel into Malaysia for essential and compassionate reasons. Since March 2020, we have also facilitated the appeals of more than 250 Singaporean citizens and permanent residents to travel to Malaysia. When Malaysia implemented its movement control order in March 2020, many Malaysians who used to commute to work in Singapore daily could not do so at the time. We worked with employers on short-term housing for these workers. In August 2020, we launched a periodic commuting arrangement to facilitate cross-border travel for work. Let me now turn to our relationship with Indonesia, which remains strong despite the pandemic. Singapore remained Indonesia's largest foreign investor in 2020, a position we have held since 2014. In fact, Singapore's investments in Indonesia increased by 50% in 2020 over 2019. We have kept up momentum on our bilateral projects. I will now elaborate these relationships in Malay. Mr. Chairman. Encik Zulkarnain telah bertanya tentang cara kami memelihara hubungan rapat kami dengan jiran terdekat Malaysia ketika pandemik COVID-19 ini, memandangkan adanya gangguan terhadap aliran rantas sempadan kita. Singapura dan Malaysia masing-masing merupakan rakan perdagangan kedua terbesar dan pelabur penting. Pandemik COVID-19 menonjolkan sikap saling bergantung antara kedua negara. Pada 18 Mac 2020, Malaysia telah mengenakan Perintah Kawalan Pergerakan pertamanya. Kami memberi reaksi yang pantas terhadap perkembangan itu. Dengan segera kita menubuhkan jawatan kuasa bekerja khas Singapura Malaysia bagi COVID-19 untuk memastikan kedua-dua pihak dapat bekerjasama dan mencapai kesudahan yang saling menguntungkan serta memudahkan pergerakan yang selamat untuk warga, barang-barang dan perkhidmatan penting. Kami telah bekerja rapat dengan Kerajaan Perikatan Nasional untuk menangani kesan daripada pandemik COVID-19, terutama sekali bagi pergerakan rentas sepadan yang penting. Ini telah membenarkan kami memastikan bahawa rantaian bekalan kami bersama Malaysia kekal berterusan, terutama sekali bagi produk makanan yang mudah rosak biarpun adanya sekatan sempadan. Seperti kami, Malaysia telah bekerja keras untuk mengawal keadaan COVID-19 mereka. Pelbagai kategori perintah kawalan pergerakan telah dilaksanakan di beberapa negeri di Malaysia. Malaysia juga telah mengisytiharkan keadaan darurat ke atas seluruh negara pada Januari 2021. Kami harapkan yang terbaik untuk mereka dan bersedia menghulurkan apa jua bantuan sekiranya perlu. Sepanjang pandemik ini, pemimpin-pemimpin dan perkhidmatan awam kita telah mengekalkan talian hubungan yang baik dan terbuka. Pandemik COVID-19 telah mengubah cara kita berinteraksi dengan pemimpin-pemimpin Malaysia. Walau bagaimanapun, kami telah dapat menggunakan cara-cara lain untuk meneruskan interaksi di peringkat tinggi ini. Ini telah membenarkan kita bekerjasama secara konstruktif dalam menghadapi cabaran yang bangkit daripada pandemik ini. Saya juga ingin merakamkan penghargaan Singapura ke atas kejayaan Malaysia sebagai pengerusi APEC meskipun adanya pandemik COVID-19, termasuk kejayaan Malaysia menjadi tuan rumah bagi persidangan pemimpin-pemimpin ekonomi APEC secara maya pada November 2020. Interaksi sebegini dapat terus memajukan integrasi ekonomi serantau dalam kita menangani pandemik ini bersama. Sekarang izinkan saya beralih tumpuan kepada hubungan Singapura dengan Indonesia. Hubungan kami dengan Indonesia mendalam dan berbagai dengan kerjasama yang saling menguntungkan dan menjangkau sektor perdagangan, pelaburan, pelancongan, keselamatan dan pendidikan. Singapura mengekalkan hubungan rapat dengan pemimpin-pemimpin Indonesia. Kami telah bekerja baik dengan Presiden Joko Widodo dan pentadbirannya, dan kami teruja menanti pelestarian momentum yang positif ini. Kami juga telah mengekalkan penglibatan serantau yang rapat dengan pemimpin-pemimpin di provinsi-provinsi Indonesia. Sebelum mulanya penularan pandemik ini, saya telah melakukan lawatan kerja ke beberapa bandar di provinsi-provinsi Indonesia, termasuk Bandar Jambi, Pekanbaru dan Batam. Ini merupakan sebahagian daripada usaha menyeluruh kami untuk mempereratkan kerjasama dengan wilayah-wilayah Indonesia dan untuk mengenal pasti peluang-peluang untuk kerjasama yang baru. Banyak di antara peluang-peluang ini terletak di provinsi Kepulauan Riau atau Kepri, terutamanya di Batam, di mana pelaburan Singapura berjumlah 132 juta dolar Amerika dalam 3 suku pertama 2020. Singapura juga merupakan negara pelabur terbesar projek-projek di Batam dengan jumlah pelaburan dalam sebanyak 620 projek. Singapura teruja meneruskan pertalian yang erat dengan pemimpin-pemimpin wilayah dan kami harap dapat memulakan kembali pertukaran menerusi lawatan fizikal apabila keadaan lebih mengizinkan. Encik John Pereira telah menyebut tentang hubungan substantif antara Indonesia dan Singapura dalam pelbagai bidang dan bertanyakan tentang usaha kami untuk mempereratkan lagi hubungan ini ketika pandemik COVID-19. Kami telah meneruskan pertukaran di peringkat tinggi bersama Indonesia. Ramai di antara menteri-menteri kabinet dan pegawai-pegawai kanan kami yang telah meneruskan penglibatan dan hubungan bersama rakan-rakan sejawatan mereka menerusi panggilan telefon dan panggilan video. Kami terus mengekalkan momentum yang kukuh untuk projek-projek ekonomi dua hala kita. Kami bersidang secara maya dalam 6 kumpulan kerja ekonomi dua hala peringkat menteri ataupun 6WG yang bertujuan membenarkan kami memajukan projek-projek saling menguntungkan seperti Taman Perindustrian Kendal dan meneroka kaedah yang meningkatkan jumlah perdagangan hasil pertanian. Di peringkat strategik pula, kami telah meneruskan perbincangan tentang pengurusan maklumat penerbangan rantau atau FIR dan latihan ketenteraan dengan Indonesia secara terasing tetapi serentak di bawah rangka kerja bagi perbincangan yang diumumkan pada Rahat Pemimpin 2019. Kami telah mengekalkan hubungan yang kukuh dalam pertahanan dan keselamatan dan bersiap sedia untuk bekerjasama di dalam bidang-bidang seperti anti pengganasan. Kami juga sedang bekerja rapat menangani cabaran-cabaran serupa seperti dalam sektor persekitaran. Selanjutnya, kita melancarkan laluan hijau timbal balik atau RGL antara Singapura dan Indonesia pada Oktober 2020. Ikutan pelancaran ini, RGL tersebut telah berjaya memudahkan perjalanan untuk kerja-kerja rasmi dan perniagaan. Meskipun RGL sedang digantung ketika ini, kami akan terus bekerjasama dengan Indonesia untuk menyambung semula RGL apabila kedua-dua pihak bersedia untuk melakukannya. Sebagai jiran yang prihatin, kami telah menyumbang secara kecil-kecilan tersendiri untuk perjuangan Indonesia ke atas COVID-19. Pada awal pandemik, kami telah menyumbang bekalan perubatan termasuk alat-alat PCR dan kit ujian serta PPEs. Pada November tahun lalu, kami mengaturkan pengiriman 10 juta pelitup dan 2 juta botol cecair pembasmi kuman ke provinsi-provinsi dan pertubuhan-pertubuhan Indonesia. Encik Zulkarnain pula telah bertanya tentang pengemaskinian hubungan kami dengan Brunei. Kami menikmati hubungan istimewa yang kekal lama yang terbina di atas kepercayaan strategik yang sekian lama antara Brunei dan Singapura. Kepercayaan ini dibuktikan oleh antara lain kerjasama pertahanan kami yang kukuh dan perjanjian pertukaran mata wang Singapura-Brunei. Singapura merupakan salah satu destinasi ekspor dan sumber utama import bagi Brunei. Singapura dan Brunei juga telah baru-baru ini menandatangani memorandum persefahaman untuk kerjasama dalam pembangunan sosial pada September 2020 dan juga kerjasama agri makanan dan agroteknologi pada Februari 2021. Pada bulan November tahun lalu, Timbalan Perdana Menteri Encik Heng Swee Keat dan saya telah mengunjungi Brunei untuk mengutuskan kawat takziah pemerintah Singapura kepada Sultan Brunei atas kemangkatan puteranya Pangeran Muda Haji Abdul Azim. Ini merupakan lawatan pertama ke luar negara oleh pemegang jawatan politik Singapura sejak sekatan perjalanan COVID-19 dikenakan. Kami telah lama menikmati kerjasama yang erat dengan Brunei dalam pelbagai sektor. Kami telah memanfaatkan jalinan erat kami untuk menangani cabaran COVID-19. Ini termasuk pelancaran RGL antara Singapura dan Brunei pada 1 September 2020. Singapura juga telah secara sepihak membuka sepadan kami kepada pelawat daripada Brunei. Singapura dan Brunei akan terus meneroka kerjasama dalam bidang-bidang baru, termasuk makanan agro, teknologi agro dan perubahan iklim. Ini merupakan beberapa cara kami memanfaatkan kekuatan hubungan kami dengan Brunei dan membina medan baru bagi kerjasama dalam tahun-tahun mendatang. Tahun ini, kami akan memberi sokongan padu pada Brunei untuk melaksanakan peranannya sebagai pengerusi ASEAN. Sir, we have received several questions on ASEAN. Ms. Sylvia Lim asked about enhancing relations among ASEAN countries, the reputation of ASEAN in the international community, and ASEAN's efforts on the situation in the South China Sea. Mr. Murali Pillay has asked how MFA can enhance cooperation with other countries, including ASEAN members, and about the integration of ASEAN markets and how such efforts to improve the lives of Singaporeans. Sir, ASEAN remains a cornerstone of Singapore's foreign policy. A stable ASEAN is important for our development. ASEAN member states have drawn closer through COVID-19 initiatives and regional economic recovery efforts. Brunei's chairmanship of ASEAN this year aims to ramp up relations among ASEAN member states and the NGO and the people sector. For instance, Brunei is leading efforts to establish a platform for the people of ASEAN to contribute to disaster relief efforts. Singapore will work closely with Brunei on these initiatives. Since its establishment, ASEAN has steadily built up a reputation as a regional architecture for external powers to dialogue with member states and one another to help foster regional peace and security. We have had many video conference meetings with external partners in 2020 at the ministerial levels and at the leaders level, which will continue this year. The historic signing of the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, or RCEP, in November 2020 is a positive development amidst difficult times. It will boost confidence in regional trade and investment with the elimination of tariffs for about 92% of goods on average traded among members. This will encourage greater trade flows and open new opportunities for our businesses and our people. This is timely as we move ahead to secure our recovery from the economic impact of COVID-19. ASEAN has a role in preserving peace and stability in our region, including the South China Sea. A key ASEAN-led process to manage the SES disputes is the Code of Conduct, or COC, in the SES negotiations. We have made good progress and commenced a second reading of the single draft negotiating text in 2019. Despite the challenges posed by COVID-19, dialogue between ASEAN and China is ongoing. We will continue to defend our rights to freedom of navigation and overflight and work through ASEAN towards an effective and substantive COC that is in accordance with the universally recognized principles of international law, including the 1982 United Nations Conventions of the Law of the Sea. Let me now give an update on ASEAN's efforts to tackle COVID-19 pandemic and on community building. While the pandemic has disrupted connectivity among ASEAN member states, we will encourage ASEAN member states to cooperate on post-pandemic recovery, regional supply chain connectivity, safely restoring cross-border travel, and enhancing resilience against public health emergencies. Just as PM encouraged countries to cooperate and develop a system to verify COVID tests and vaccinations, I hope ASEAN will cooperate on measures to safely restore regional connectivity when conditions permit. ASEAN has made steady progress combating the pandemic. It promptly set up the ASEAN Coordinating Council Working Group on Public Health Emergencies. This led to several initiatives, including the COVID-19 ASEAN Response Fund. Singapore contributed US $100,000 to the fund, which will be used to purchase medical equipment and other items to help fellow ASEAN member states combat the pandemic. Singapore recognizes the importance of these mechanisms, which have enhanced our ability collectively to deal with COVID-19. Mr. Derek Goh has asked how Singapore can support this year's ASEAN Chair, Brunei, to forge a closer ASEAN. Singapore supports Brunei's chairmanship agenda and will work with Brunei to advance ASEAN community building, economic integration and regional stability, and to develop cooperation in new areas of importance such as digitalization, cybersecurity, smart cities, and climate change. As ASEAN EU country coordinator, we have also strengthened cooperation between ASEAN and the European Union, or EU, following the recent elevation of dialogue relations to a strategic partnership. And the ASEAN-EU FTA will present new opportunities for inter-regional collaboration on issues such as supply chain and digital connectivity. We look forward to the finalization of the ASEAN-EU FTA. Mr. Abdul Samad has asked how we are deepening our engagement with other key partners beyond ASEAN. India is one such partner. India and Singapore must continue to collaborate on new frontiers such as innovation, the digital economy, and fintech. Singapore was among the largest foreign investors in India for the past several years. Likewise, Indian investments in Singapore have increased from 21.9 billion Singapore dollars in 2009 to $28.8 billion in 2019 in sectors such as finance, insurance, and infocommunication technology, or ICT. Our companies see great opportunity in India. For example, Novad is a startup providing smart field management solutions for capital land and local developers in India's construction industry. And this industry contributed to over US $188 billion to India's GDP in financial year 2019, and is expected to be the world's third largest construction market in 2024. And our Singapore companies are in that market. We look forward to collaborating with India in other areas of mutual interest, including digital connectivity and artificial intelligence, as well as facilitate our company's effort at harnessing the huge Indian market. As Singapore assumes coordinatorship of ASEAN-India dialogue relations in August 2021, we will seek to promote win-win cooperation between ASEAN and India. Next, to the Middle East. Mr. Saktendra Supaat asks when our citizens will be able to travel to perform the Hajj and Umrah. We understand our Muslim community longs to perform the Hajj and Umrah. MFA will work closely with MOH and MOIS to monitor the COVID-19 situation and assess when it will be safe for such travel to resume, in line with the overall National Advisory for Overseas Travel. We seek the community's continued understanding and patience. At the G2G level, we seek to enhance economic and political collaboration with key partners where opportune. We are in the midst of establishing the Singapore-Saudi Joint Committee on Economic Cooperation, mooted during President Halimah Yacob's state visit to Saudi Arabia in November 2019. We will support our companies as they explore opportunities in the Middle East's largest economy. We also welcome recent positive developments in the region. Mr. Alex Yam has noted Israel and a number of Arab countries have normalized relations following the signing of the Abraham Accords in August 2020. And in January, Qatar and its neighbors agreed to restore ties. We hope that these developments lead to new opportunities for cooperation and growth and sustainable peace and security in the region. We continue to encourage Israel and Palestinians to resolve their long-standing conflict. Singapore has taken a consistent and principled position, supporting a negotiated two-state solution consistent with the relevant United Nations Security Council resolutions. Now to Sub-Saharan Africa. The continent is the fastest urbanizing region in the world. Its young population has the potential to unlock significant economic growth. The launch of the African Continent Free Trade Agreement, or AFCFTA, in January 2021 may well create opportunities for our businesses to tap into the market of over 1.2 billion people with a combined GDP of US $3.4 trillion. Ms. Joan Pereira has asked how Singaporean companies are tapping the continent's market. There are currently about 60 Singapore companies operating across Sub-Saharan Africa in a wide range of sectors, such as agribusiness, oil and gas, and fintech. One such company is Accent Solutions, which specializes in the Internet of Things, or IoT, and GPS security tracking solutions for the logistic industry. Its iSpot electronic cargo tracking system, for example, is deployed in several countries, including Ghana, Kenya, and Tanzania. In Kenya, it helped customs agencies reduce the time taken to clear bonded cargo traveling from Mombasa to Malabar from 20 days to under 3 days. In Ghana, the National Petroleum Authority, NPA, has implemented iSpot to track and the delivery of petroleum products to 4,000 petrol retail outlets nationwide. Africa now contributes more than 20% of Exxon's revenue. Mr. Gan Tiempo has asked about our efforts to deepen our engagement in emerging markets, including through measures such as the FTAs. We have continued to pursue opportunities with emerging markets, including Central and Eastern Europe, Latin America, in areas including innovation, digitalization, and agri-food. For instance, we welcomed the first shipment of eggs from Poland in June 2020 as part of a larger food diversification initiative. Singapore also signed the Digital Economy Partnership Agreement with Chile and New Zealand in June 2020, a first-of-its-kind agreement that establishes new approaches and collaborations in digital trade and promotes interoperability and addresses new issues brought about by digitalization. We look forward to the successful completion of the Eurasian Economic Union Singapore Free Trade Agreement, which will facilitate increased economic exchanges with the EAEU member states, Russia, Armenia, Belarus, Kazakhstan, and Kazakhstan, as well as the region as a whole. This will create diverse economic opportunities for Singaporean businesses in the combined Eurasian market of more than 180 million people. We are also deepening our engagement with Latin America. We are currently negotiating the Pacific Alliance Singapore Free Trade Agreement and the Mercosur Singapore Free Trade Agreement. Last year, we made good progress with the substantial conclusion of the FTA negotiations with the Pacific Alliance, which comprised Chile, Colombia, Mexico, and Peru in December. We are keeping up with the momentum so that we can conclude negotiations and sign the PA-FTA this year. Once concluded, the PA-Singapore FTA will establish the Pacific Alliance's first FTA with Singapore and our first bilateral FTA with Colombia. Singapore will become the first associate state of the Pacific Alliance. This will provide Singapore a platform to pursue more economic collaboration with the Pacific Alliance in areas such as digital economy, trade facilitation, energy sector, and infrastructure. Likewise, we hope to expeditiously conclude our FTA negotiation with the Mercosur, which is made up of Argentina, Brazil, Paraguay, and Uruguay. Mercosur represents a market of 266 million people and a combined GDP of $4.4 trillion. Once concluded, these trade agreements will deepen our economic links with Latin America and strengthen Singapore's value as a commercial bridge between Latin America and Southeast Asia. Mr. Chairman, I conclude by reiterating that despite the constraints imposed by COVID-19, we must continue cooperating with our partners for the security, peace, and prosperity of Singapore and the region. As our external environment remains in flux, our tenacity and resilience as a people have enabled us to strengthen these relationships and advance forward. In doing so, we strengthen Singapore's resilience and relevance. As long as we remain relevant to the world, we secure the interests of Singapore and Singaporeans. And I'll turn the floor to my colleague, SMS Hong Tat.